Hello there, I'm Laura Lee. Thanks for tuning in to Conversation for Exploration. Tonight, Jordan Maxwell joins us. He says that our modern world, yes, rests squarely upon our historical world, but he's here tonight to detail some of the arcane and forgotten ways in which the ancient mindset informs our present-day institutions. Welcome, Jordan.
Yeah, what a subject we have embarked upon.
What a subject we've embarked upon.
Yeah.
This has occupied you for how many years now?
For 40 years I have been involved in researching and studying the subject of occultism in politics and religion and institutions.
Uh-huh.
And by occultism I mean the classic understanding of the word occult in Latin means that which is hidden. And so much in our world that we live in is hidden from us. We use terms and words and phrases and see symbols and emblems all around us. And so much of it is hidden to us. We don't really understand why we use certain terms and why we use certain words. And most people are just not very well informed as to how the entire world really works. And so the word occult does not mean evil or bad. It just means hidden.
Is it mean forgotten because once everyone was well aware of what some of these connections were, but we've just forgotten over time?
Yeah, well...
Or were they hidden in the first place?
Well, I can give you some examples. Most people are frightened to death when they're summoned to court. And it never, most likely has never occurred to anyone, why do you even call that thing a court? Why do you go to court? Because you play basketball on a court.
Uh-huh.
You know, you play tennis on a court.
Right.
The reason why it's called a court is because it's basically a game, and the idea is that the judge is a referee, and the whole idea is to put the ball back in the other guy's court.
Oh, I see.
Consequently, it's a fascinating study of words and terms. Let me give you a better example. There are two kinds of laws in the world. Now, very few people even have heard of this, but there are only two kinds of law on the earth. One is called civil law, and it comes from the word civili, which is a Latin term. Civil law is the law of the culture of the people that live in the country. And so, therefore, it's referred to in law as, civil law is referred to as the law of the land.
Okay.
Because that's where people live, is on the land. However, there is another law which also operates on earth, and incidentally, the law of the land is different in every country, of course, because in every country the culture is different. So you can do things in Russia you can't do in Africa, or you can do things in Spain that you can't do in England. So it's according to the custom of the people decides what is referred to as civil law, or the law of the land. Now, there's a higher law which governs the whole earth, but that's a law that none of us seem to be very well acquainted with, and that is called the law of the high seas.
The law of the high seas?
Yes, the law of the high seas is the most powerful law on the face of the earth. There is nothing over it, nothing. It's the most powerful law existing on the earth, called the law of the high seas. It goes all the way back, as far back as the Sumerian and Babylonian empires. It was perfected under the Roman Empire, and it has come down to us from Rome today. It is still enforced the same way as it started out in Sumeria some 7,000 years ago.
Uh-huh.
To the Roman Empire some 3,000 years ago. And today, England and America and the entire world of mankind operates under a world law, which is referred to as the law of the high seas, or International Maritime Admiralty.
Oh, now it's been renamed to International Maritime Admiralty.
Right.
What does it say, and who would enforce this? And what about landlocked countries? Are they bound by this if they don't have access to the high seas?
No, they're not. They all nations live under it. All nations.
Says who?
Because...
Do they have to agree to it? Is it like a treaty?
Yes, it's not really a treaty. It has been understood and was laid down by the ancient powers of the world and the prehistoric and the ancient world, and pretty well codified by the time it reached Egypt. And from Egypt and its influence on Rome, and of course Greece, and then into the modern day world. Basically, what the law of the high seas or the maritime admiralty law is the law of money, the law of international banking. Because you see, you can do business here in America. You can buy things from, say, Russia, import them, and turn right around and export them to another country.
Right, and so all of those early cultures that traded wanted to make a law that would be bound by all the tradies.
That's exactly right.
Okay.
That's all it is. It's just a banking law that establishes an absolute bottom line for the whole earth to do business. It doesn't matter what your currency is worth or who you are or what your culture or color or your background of your country. It doesn't matter. We're doing business. If you're doing business, we're talking about banks.
What does the law say? What is it? What's on its books?
Well, it's called the Law of Maritime Admiralty, and goodness, where would you start? Let me give you an example.
What is it?
When a ship pulls into port in, say, Los Angeles and New York, say from Japan with $50 million worth of televisions, it's coming in on water to start with.
Mm-hmm.
Consequently, it is also bringing products for the exchange of money. So banks are involved. American banks are going to have to pay up to the Japanese banks who finance the Japanese industry. So banks are being paid or paying each other. Consequently, if Japan sends us materials and Americans decide we don't want to pay Japan for whatever reason, Sears and Roebuck decide they don't want to pay Japan for the $50 million in television they sent, what is Japan going to do? Well, virtually nothing.
However, because it's merchandise is over here and they really don't have say on the law of the land.
Yes.
So that's why they invoke the law of the high seas. Or
that's exactly right. Mm-hmm. Now you have serious problems. Because now the corporation that accepted the contract and accepted the goods and did not pay for them, now they have offended international maritime admiralty law, and you don't do that.
That's a big no-no.
You don't mess with the banks. You can mess with your friends across the street and have little enemies around town, but you don't mess with the international banks. You owe them, you pay them, period.
What are they, like the mafia or something? They shake you down?
Well, I mean, the same people who founded the mafia founded the modern-day international banking cartels back in the 9th and 10th century. They were called the Templars, the Knights of the Temple of Solomon.
Oh, right, because they wanted to know how to transfer their own gold, not in physical form where someone could rob them along the crusade routes.
You got it.
But so that they could make it to Jerusalem and then have their funds transferred there.
And it worked out so well that there became a camaraderie among nations and bankers and traders all over the Middle East, all over the Near East, and finally into Europe,
but
where
go ahead.
Where everyone understood how this thing works.
But they were traders long before they were Freemasons.
Oh, of course. I understand that. As I said,
it goes back to 7,000 years old
ideas, sciences, institutions do what we call mutate. They evolve. And as they evolve, different people pick them up and evolve them higher and higher. Obviously, but I'm saying that the way that we do banking today goes back to the 9th and 10th century in the Anglo-Saxon world, in the English-speaking world.
You did see that. And the Templars were so successful, they got one of those kings after them to destroy them and nab their wealth, too.
Well, that's exactly the problem.
Then they went underground. Yeah.
Well, anyway, let me go back to the proposition that Japan brings in, say, $50 million worth of televisions, and they're on board the ship, and consequently, that's why we use the word today. When you're going to send a product through the mail, you're going to ship it to them.
Even if it goes by air.
Yeah, because that's what a plane is. It's an airship.
Right.
Or when it goes to the moon, there's a rocket ship.
That's why in the Enterprise they call it the bridge.
Yeah. So anyway, the ship pulls in from Japan, say, and it is coming in on water with products which are going to cause money to change hands. Therefore, the ship pulls into and parks where it's supposed to, and when it parks, it is referred to as in its berth. It's called berthing a ship. So the ship now sits in its berth, which is next to the dock. It has to be tied to the dock, and now the first thing the captain has to do, because we're talking about money now, we're talking about banking. It has nothing to do with who came into this country or what the culture is here. We're talking about money. Consequently, the captain of the ship has to provide the port authorities with a certificate of manifest, or a certificate showing what he is bringing in to sell and do business in this country.
Right.
So therefore, he has to have a certificate of manifest showing what it is he has brought into the economy of this country and how much is it going to make and how much do we have to pay. Now,
so we can calculate our gross national product. Yeah.
Exactly. That's it. And so consequently, many people do not realize that when you were born, you came out of your mother's water. And consequently, you are a maritime admiralty product by law because you came out of water. You came down your mother's birth canal. Consequently, it sounds silly, but in point of fact, it's lawfully correct that since you came out of your mother's water, you are a maritime product. You are what is referred to as a national product.
I'm a commodity.
A commodity. You are. That's why if you're unemployed, you go to the human resource. Unemployment, you're a resource. Just like televisions and radio and anything else that can make us money. You're a resource. Now, this is why when you were born, the dock has to sign your birth certificate.
Just like the manifest of a ship.
Of course. That's all it is. It's a maritime admiralty manifest showing that your mother brought you into the world and you were going to make money. It doesn't matter how much. The fact is you're going to make and use and make money. Consequently, you are a maritime admiralty product. To show you the difference between maritime admiralty, the law of the water, and the law of the land, which is civil law, the Statue of Liberty could not be put on American land by law. It had to be put in water. So they had to build up that place out there called the island for them to put the Statue of Liberty on, because by law it could not be put on American land. The reason why is because the Statue of Liberty is not the Statue of Freedom. It's the Statue of Liberty. Liberty is what a sailor gets when he pulls into port in the Navy. The Navy owns you. If you join any military establishment, you are, in point of fact, a GI, a government issue. You are owned as a piece of property. For the time you're in there, you are property. And consequently, if you have a fleet of cars, they are your property as a corporation, but if one of them gets tore up in an accident, so what? So you take it off the operating expenses. You don't cry about it. If you have whatever it is that you're losing in business, you just take it off your taxes. Well, and any time a military person gets killed, there's nothing to cry about. It's just a piece of property. So you just take it off of the taxes, and it's a maritime admiralty product. And the entire thing is a piece of business. It's nothing, it's nothing personal. Now, once you understand that you are a maritime admiralty product, if you order a big refrigerator or some large item from, say, Sears, and you can't take it with you in the car, well, then you have to wait till they deliver it the next day. Well, this is what your mother did. She delivered you in the delivery room because she was delivering a product, and under maritime law. Now, all of this is just academic, and it's interesting to some people. Most people couldn't care less about it. because they don't see the profound significance of it. But it's when you get into court, when you are stopped by the policeman, when you get the bill from the Internal Revenue, or you get a subpoena to court, or get yourself in some serious trouble. Now it becomes important for the first time in your life to understand how you got in trouble and how to get out of it. Well, you got in trouble because you are a maritime admiralty product. So when you go to court, the judge is a referee. And the referee will sit and listen to both players on both sides of the courtroom. And the whole idea, as I said, is to put the ball back in the other guy's court. And at the end, the judge will decide who won the battle and who won the game. Mm-hmm. Now, he sits on the bench, which is a maritime admiralty term. The judges rule from the bench. The word bench is a Latin word for bank.
Oh, really?
So if you went to the bank in the Roman Empire, you went to the bench. And consequently, the judge rules for the bank because he sits on the bench. And he wears a black robe. Why do judges wear black robes?
They look distinguished and dignified?
Well, it looks like it's important. It makes it look official. No, it has nothing to do with looking official. Black robes have to do with a secret society or a brotherhood that's come down to us for the past 6,000 years. It's called the Saturnalian Brotherhood. The Saturnalian Brotherhood, or the law of the planet Saturn. Saturn now comes into the picture of maritime admiralty. This goes all the way back to, as I said, the old Phoenician, Canaanites, Sumerians, was picked up in Greece and Rome, and even the Nazis wore black robes. And in England, of course, the lords wear black robes, and in America, our judges still wear black robes. It's a startling and profound story when you understand how courts work. And how do you determine what is civil and what is maritime admiralty? Well, first of all, if any money is changed hands or has changed hands, which caused the problem, you're talking about maritime admiralty. Anything where money changes hands is now business. And this brings into play maritime admiralty.
So this is different than damages. So if somebody breaks something in your storefront and you wanted to get reimbursed, that's civil law.
No, that's maritime admiralty.
Because
money is going to change hands, or...
Well, isn't that the case in most suits?
Say it again?
Isn't that the case in most suits, that there's some dollar amount attached to it somehow, somewhere?
No. Anytime something like that happens, you go into court. And you can plead your case one way or the other, but it is still being heard officially under maritime admiralty and not under civil. So much of our laws have been, even the law of the land has now been transferred under the law of maritime admiralty, because the corporation called United States went bankrupt in 1930 under maritime admiralty. I should stipulate this, that back in the 1870s, right after the Civil War quieted down, a group of men got together and incorporated a privately owned corporation or a company. Well, of course, anyone can. Well, this group of men got together and they incorporated a company, and they called the company, very clever, they called their company United States Company. And consequently, they stipulated that if anyone be a member of that company or working for that company, they would be called not an employee but a citizen. And so very cleverly today, if someone asks you in a bank or filling out an application, are you a citizen of the United States, what you think that they are asking you is, are you lawfully and legally in America to do business? But they're not asking you if you're in America. They ask you if you're a citizen of the United States, meaning under maritime law, not whatever you thought it meant, but what in fact it means.
Where are you getting all this, Jordan?
Where am I getting it?
This is I don't know. I'm just going, is this in the history books? Is this being, where is this?
Well, it's all over. You got to go to the library and get reference books on maritime law, international maritime admiralty law.
And this is all explained in there.
Well, I mean, it's not all explained in one book.
You're putting the course together.
It's like anything else. Is the whole subject of physics explained in a book somewhere where I can go read it? No.
Where is this corporation? You're saying that somebody put up a side-by-side corporation then sort of subsumed the U.S.?
Yeah, of course.
And nobody knows about it?
That's right. Absolutely.
Except the people invoking it?
Yeah, but don't take it personal. It's just business.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So consequently, it's like anything else. Any good detective, what am I trying to say? Like Columbo. At the end of the movies of Columbo, he sits there and explains how he came up with the conclusions and caught the robber and caught the guy. But you think, well, how did you know that? Where did you get all this information? Well, it takes some 40 years of being experienced to know what you're looking for. You have to be educated in this particular field to know what the words and symbols mean. So when you walk into the crime scene, unlike the rookie, you already know what to look for. And in about 10 minutes, Columbo has already sized up the situation and pretty well knows what happened here and has probably nailed down who did it. Now all he has to do is put a case together and prove it.
Okay, but here's a question. If you're saying that there's this occult system that supersedes all the laws that we think we operate on, and but everybody has to agree to it or nobody's going to follow those laws. All laws are somebody saying, this is the law. It's just a system that you get everybody to agree to make the thing function.
Well,
I don't see how a hidden law system, unless everybody knows about it, can even function, because nobody's going to follow. If there's just a tiny group of people that are holding the reins here, to me it's contrary to the whole concept of what laws do. They're just agreed upon principles, rules of the game.
Well, when you walk into...
How can there be two games going on at the same time?
Say it again?
How can there be two games going on at the same time under two different sets of rules?
Oh, heavens. Where have you been?
Unless there's a wider number of people who are agreeing to this occult maritime law thing that you're talking about going on. I'm just asking a logical question.
No, I know, but I'm just saying, do you not know that when you walk into, say, a large bank in New York City like Chase Manhattan, excuse me, and you're going to do $100 million worth of business, you have to know that if you're going to, say, open up a corporation or move your corporation funds as like an international corporation, General Motors or whatever, you're going to have to know that you're going to need attorneys, you're going to need advisors, you're going to need a whole army of professionals to explain to the boss and explain to the stockholders how this international banking world works. You can't just walk in and put $700 million into an account and wire it. If you're a corporation, there are certain laws, regulations, rules, and you don't have to know them all, but you had better have someone hired that does know them all.
Well, right, but everybody agrees that they exist and will operate under them.
Well, so everybody agrees that international banking laws govern banking. And who agrees to that? The banks do. You don't have to agree to anything. The banks have already agreed to it because the banks have already connected to maritime admiralty. So you don't have to worry about how banks work. You don't have to worry about how the federal government works. It's there. And if you're a part of it, you'll know how it works. And if you're not, just be careful and don't get in trouble. No, I mean, but you don't have to understand it. People don't.
But you're saying there's a whole group of people that work the government, but then they write textbooks that explain it in an entirely different fashion. I mean, I can see some textbook error, but a whole. Anyway, I'm not going to argue the veracity of it. Go ahead. I want to hear this out.
I understand your feelings because it is a new it's a new subject, but that's That's what you run into when you're a talk show host. You run into all kinds of strange and interesting things.
Go ahead.
And but just mark my words that what I'm telling you is the truth, and one has only to go to a library.
Yeah.
And call your local bank. Don't talk to the tellers. Tellers know nothing. Talk to the head office of the bank and talk to the president of the bank and ask them if they know anything about international maritime admiralty law.
Okay.
And they will tell you, yes, that is the Bible for all banking on the earth, period.
Interesting. Okay.
And it has nothing to do with you. You don't have to worry about nothing. You just put your money in the bank every week and do your job and pay your bills and stay out of the way. The international banking cartels operating all over the earth for the past 1,600 years under the Roman Empire, they will take care of business. They know what they're doing. It has nothing to do with you. It's actually none of your business.
I was asking more about the corporation that called itself the U.S. that
Okay.
you said superseded our Constitution, which we think we run on.
Yeah. All right. Let me go back to that then. The company was called United States, and anyone who works for that company is referred to as a citizen of the United States. It does not matter if you are an American. It doesn't matter. No one's asking you when you walk into a bank to fill out a form to open an account. They didn't ask you, are you lawfully in the country called America? Are you an American, or are you lawfully in this country of America as an American? Nobody ever asks you that because nobody cares about that. You're doing banking. It doesn't matter if you're mafia or if you're some Mexican slave from Mexico or if you're Don Corleone. It doesn't matter. Banks are banks for money. I mean, everybody knows that. Nobody cares where your money comes from. It could be drug money. It could be hard-earned money from picking cotton. It doesn't matter. It's just a bank.
Mm-hmm.
So consequently,
you have to finish the story when we come back from this break. We're talking with Jordan Maxwell. We have a link to his website if you'd like to learn more. I'm Laura Lee.
Laura Lee Online. www.lauralee.com.
All interviews on The Laura Lee Show are available on audio cassette. For information, call 1-800-243-1438.
The sweet secret of the herb stevia lies in a complex molecule called stevioside, a glycoside composed of glucose, sophrose, and steviol, a complex molecule that gives this herb from Paraguay its extraordinary sweetness, 10 to 15 times sweeter than common table sugar. But here's the really extraordinary part. Stevia does not affect blood sugar metabolism. Some studies even report that stevia reduces plasma glucose levels in normal adults. Sweet, nutritious, natural, and good for you. Wisdom of the Ancients introduces Stevia Plus. Take these little packets with you everywhere, containing powdered stevia that equals 2 teaspoons of sugar and sweetness. Sprinkle on food and beverages alike. I use stevia daily. Add the liquid concentrate to lemon juice and water, and you have refreshing lemonade, and decarbonated water for a soda substitute. Stevia makes any herbal tea taste sweeter and better. Stevia is good for your skin, too, applied externally. Try it. It's versatile, good for you, and sweet without the calories.
Wisdom of the Ancient Stevia products are the highest quality available. Call 1-800-243-1438.
We all try to watch our diet to get a balance of nutrition, but that's not always possible. There is a gap between the nutrition from the average American diet and the optimum diet for the human system. The challenge is to take care of our own health while being able to enjoy comfort foods. That's why nutritionist and biochemist Udo Erasmus developed Missing Link. It bridges this gap with foods naturally high in essential nutrients, trace minerals, vitamins, and fiber. Call 1-800-243-1438. Missing Link is a powder that you sprinkle on your food, making your food taste better, and 3 tablespoons daily is all you need to achieve optimum nutrition. Call 1-800-243-1438. Each bag contains a 1-month supply and is only $19.95. Call 1-800-243-1438.
Lorley here with Jordan Maxwell. Jordan, continue. You're telling us how the ancient mindset still has quite a hold on our institutions in a very occult or hidden way.
Yes, it's an extraordinary story, and I grant you that. And it's and most Americans, most people have never thought in these terms. But it doesn't mean that it's not right. It just means that most people have never thought about such things. If we go back to, let's say, the courts to start with.
Yeah.
The court, well, let me explain this, that the difference between a maritime admiralty or banking law and civil law is night and day. There's no connection at all. When you get any bill, now follow what I'm saying, any kind of a legal, lawful communication from government or from any corporation, say a bill from an oil company, internal revenue bill, a subpoena to court, anything which is lawful, legal, and is business.
Yeah.
Anything in this country that you receive as a subpoena to court or a bill to the Internal Revenue or your oil credit card bill, whatever it is, if it's a lawful, legal document of any kind, period, your name appearing on that document must be, according to maritime law, it must be in all capital letters. It cannot be upper and lower case. That's the law.
Really?
Therefore, anytime you are sued, anytime you get a bill from anyone, anytime you get subpoenas to court or fined or ticketed or sued in court, your name must appear on any and all paperwork in all capital letters. Why? Because you do not own your body. You do not own yourself. Consequently, you are a product. You are a maritime admiralty product. Someone else owns you. Therefore, you are dead to any rights. You have what is referred to in law, no leg to stand on. You have no standing. And why? Because all capital letters name implies that you are a maritime admiralty product. You are not a human. You're not a living entity. You're a product. Because your living entity person, the actual you, is represented under law by upper and lower case name. Upper and lower case. So if you sign your name upper and lower case, everyone in law, most people don't know this, but people in law will know, this represents you, your personal self in your body.
Yeah.
However, if they're going to sue you or send you a bill, no one can attach anything to your physical body. No one can come in, touch you, or take from you. So it has to be done lawfully and legally. Well, all law in this country, no matter what it is, civil, state, county, federal, international, all law in this country and in the English-speaking world is all law is applied to corporations, not to individuals, upper and lower case names. All law can only be applied to corporations. It can only be applied on the maritime. It can only be applied to the all capital letters name. And all capital letters name means that you are a product. You are nothing more than a product. So as a living entity, you're dead. This is why when you drive by a graveyard, you will see on the tombstones, the letters on the tombstones representing the people buried there are in all capital letters. You will never see a tombstone where it uses upper and lower case letters because, according to the law, if you are dead, your name is in all capital letters. That means you are a corporate entity, and the corporation just disbanded. Last night when you died, the corporation no longer exists, so we buried the corporation. But you are a corporation.
Uh-huh.
Therefore, when you get a subpoena to court or you get a lawsuit, your name will appear in all capital letters because all law
Has to apply.
applies only to corporations, period.
So you're suggesting each person's a corporation, but what if they haven't gone through the rights of incorporating?
No. The mere fact that you are a maritime admiralty product doing business, they have automatically put you under a corporation title. So you are a corporation whether you know it or not. But you are merely a subsidiary of a larger corporation called United States. This is the way the law works.
Do lawyers know this?
When you sign anything with upper and lower case, you're signing for yourself, your body, your personal self.
Right.
But in a court, this is why when you walk into a court, you have to put your hand on when they call your name. You walk up to the gate. Most people have never wondered, why do you have a fence and a gate in a courtroom?
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, well, the reason why is because on the outside where the people sit is civil law. That's where the people, the civili in Latin, the civil, the civiles are sitting. But when you walk past the gate, you are now under International Maritime Admiralty. You have just entered the bank.
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Consequently, when they call your name, you put your hand on the gate and walk through. What you have done is that you have just by that act alone of putting your hand on that gate and opening it up, what you have done according to the law, which incidentally you didn't know existed, what you have done is you have said, out of your own volition, according to your own desire, you have put your hand on the gate and opened the gate, which is a symbol under maritime law of you opening yourself up to the jurisdiction of maritime law. You, your upper and lower case name, which represents your body, your blood, and your person, is agreeing to become, in this litigation, you are agreeing to go before the international banks to settle this. So therefore, that's why you have to sit outside of the gate until your name is called, and now you walk inside, and now you are no longer a person, you're a dead man. You are totally dead. Therefore, this is why we say that you have, quote, no standing, end quote, meaning that you have to sit down and you have to have an attorney stand
for you
because he has, quote, standing in law, end quote. You have no standing. Why? Because your name on the paperwork is in all capital letters, means like the graveyard, you are a dead person. You don't even exist. You're dead. So therefore, since you're dead, you have nothing to say. How many times have you driven by a cemetery and people stand up and argue with you? Nobody's going to say anything to you who are buried in a cemetery. So therefore, they have not a leg to stand on, or they have no standing.
Got it.
Now, once you understand that and can comprehend that concept, now move on to why the judge wears the black robe.
You already explained that one.
Black is the color of saffron.
Mm-hmm.
And since the judge is now ruling in the court for the bank, where do you find banks? Banks are on both sides of a river. They're called river banks. And what does a river bank do? It directs the flow of the current of the river. And this is exactly what the judge is there to do, to direct the flow of the current, see. Because the bank is the director of the flow of the currency, or the cash flow. And so therefore you are now entered into maritime admiralty, and somebody's going to pay. Now, who's going to pay? Well, it depends on who wins the game or who loses the game, so it's putting the ball back in the other guy's court. The whole entire superstructure of law is devoted to one thing, and that's corporations and money. Has nothing to do with you as an upper and lowercase name. They can only deal with you as a corporation. Now, if you go into court and they read out your name, and you're sitting on the outside under civil law, and they read your name out, I have seen people do this who are knowledgeable on this subject. And incidentally, I am not the world's foremost expert on this particular subject, but I'm knowledgeable enough to talk with you about it. But I'm not the expert, so there will be questions you might have that I can't answer.
Okay.
I'm just giving you an general overall discussion of this interesting subject of words and terms.
Mm-hmm.
But when you are called in court, people who are very knowledgeable on this, which I have watched them do, they will stand and say, perhaps you might be talking about me. I don't know. Let me see the paperwork. Let me see the bank's paperwork. And the marshal or whoever, the officer of the court will say, look, is your name John Brown or isn't it? I just called John Brown. Is that you? And that person said, no, I don't know for sure. It could be. I'm not sure. Show me the paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
So then he walks over and shows you the papers, the subpoena or whatever, the paperwork that's brought you to the court. And looking at the paperwork, you see your name in all capital letters.
Uh-huh.
The person would then say to the marshal, no, I am sorry, I've made a mistake. This is not me. I thought it might possibly be me, but it isn't me.
Because it wasn't in upper and lower case.
That's exactly right. Because my body, my person, this person that you're seeing standing in front of you, this is a living entity that my mother gave birth to. And consequently, this law, it only applies to corporations, and I do not choose to be a corporation. I choose to represent myself in upper and lower case. So you talk to me. Don't talk to me as if I were a company. And consequently, the judge will then say, all right, we know now that you understand how this trick is played, so we will have you come back in, say, a couple of weeks, and we'll adjust the paperwork for you, because you know what this means, so we'll adjust it for you.
So you don't get off the hook.
No, you don't get off the hook, but they know that you know what the law is.
So let me ask you, if what you're saying is true, then how far up the ladder is this common knowledge? If you were going to go to law school, if you were a judge, do they all know this? They just don't tell their clients this unless asked? How far does this filter down?
For the most part, know this. But most attorneys are trained under civil law. And consequently, most attorneys study to do one thing. They do not study to know the law. This is a misunderstanding, but that's all right. America misunderstands a lot. Attorneys do not go to college and study law. They go to study the system that operates, which we call law.
They don't get direct access to the law, which you're saying is written in a very different way than they're taught.
Exactly.
They just go to learn how to work the system.
That's exactly right. Consequently, they are told, look, you are an officer of the court. Once you become an attorney, you're an officer of the court. Meaning, we're going to, it's like when you become an attorney, it's like saying, look, we're going to hire you as a salesman for General Motors or Sears and Roebuck or any other large corporation. You don't need to know what the boss's business is. You don't need to understand who we're doing banking with. You don't need to understand anything.
We'll give you a manual for training that we write ourselves.
All you need to know is what we tell you need to know, and that is how to sell the product, how to put the money into cash register, and how to balance out every evening. That's all you need to know. Now, if you want a job, or don't you? Now, if you want to get clever and start talking to the president of the company after hours and finding fault with the way he runs his corporation, then you're not going to have a job here very long. You just do what you've been trained to do.
Okay, question. So the person who said, I'm not this corporation, I'm not the person on this paper because it's all caps and I'm an upper and lower case kind of guy,
that's right,
goes away, and then they adjust the paperwork. So then they subpoena him again or whatever, summons him with an upper and lower case. Now, do different laws apply?
No. Now, here's what's going to happen. you will come back to the court, because I've seen this happen, and there is your name now all neat and orderly, upper and lower case. And now the judge is smiling and grinning because he knows he has you now. Because you knew, as well as he did, that he doesn't have anything as long as your name is in all capital. But now that you know, and he knows, he has changed the paperwork for you, and now it's upper and lower case name. Now he's got you. However, the law says, maritime law says, any time, period, any time, you use a name upper and lower case on a piece of business, it must, by law, must be followed by an AKA, also known as. And then the name must be in all capital letters, because no law in this country applies to you, period. Therefore, if you're going to use the upper and lower case name, which is you, then you're going to have attached to that an AKA, which is also known as
the uppercase,
the all capital letters name.
So it's just saying, we know that you're this piece of property, but you may think of yourself, and we're going to attach you with this AKA. All right. So then what happens? Then they proceed with even more vengeance?
Then what happens, the judge will say, all right, is your name now spelled correctly? And you have to say, yes, that is my name. Now you've got me. However, according to the law, all federal laws, state laws, no one, and that is no one, can get an AKA on your name but you.
Oh.
No one.
Interesting.
I cannot walk into the county court of records in your city and ask for an AKA. I want to do business as, or also known as, Laura Lee.
Mm-hmm. Because
they're going to say, well, where's your identification to show me who you really are as opposed to who you want to be? And consequently, it would be a very serious offense for me to get an AKA using your name.
Okay, so the court can't really do it, or the judge,
right.
or who these lawyers. So then
exactly.
what?
Then you can say to the judge, as these people did that I saw,
mm-hmm.
who got me an AKA without telling me? Because whoever did that is going to jail.
Mm-hmm. Because you can't do that.
Because no one can get me an AKA and use my name and sign my name to an affidavit saying that I want an AKA without my express written permission signed by me, and I have to pay the $20 to get the AKA. No one told me I had an AKA. No one asked me for that. No one inquired of me if I wanted an AKA. Therefore, someone has committed a felony.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to jail because they used my name on this document unlawfully. I am not an AKA. I am not all capital letters. Thank you. I am upper and lower case. If you can get me any kind of a piece of paper that has my name upper and lower case, by itself, of its own, with no AKA, now you've got me.
Mm-hmm.
And the judge will say, we cannot do that. It is impossible. Under law, no one can be held if it's upper and lowercase name. We have to have it all capital letters. Then I would say to the judge, well, I'm sorry, adios, goodbye.
And so your friend did that?
Oh, yeah, I've seen many people do that.
Ah.
And the judge cannot do anything.
So the lawsuit or the summons or whatever is dropped?
The whole thing is dropped because that's the law. If you cannot, unless you want to press it, if the judge wants to press it, he knows whoever he sent to get the AKA is going to jail. He knows that. I know that.
Uh-huh.
So consequently, they have played out their hand, and you played out yours, and they've come to the end of the line, and then they say, just throw this case out.
Uh-huh.
Next case. Now, that's just one of many ways in which our
endgame
is used. Incidentally, I'll go back to that idea about the judges in black robes, and black was a color associated with the planet Saturn. Now, that's a whole new subject, and that's worthy of about 2 programs on its own, just talking about the planet Saturn and how it influences our institutions of government, religion, education, sciences today.
And how far back does this go, this fascination with Saturn?
The Saturnalian influence in men's affairs goes all the way back to Phoenicia, Cana, probably to Samaria before that, but it was perfected in what we call Phoenicia or Cana. It was very prominent in Egypt, extraordinarily prominent in Rome, very heavily involved in Eastern and Europe in general. And of course today our country is just flooded with the influence of the planet Saturn.
How so?
Well, Saturn was referred to in the old Phoenician Canaanite language. You know, in the Bible we're told that the Jews went into the land of Cana.
Mm-hmm.
Cana is what we today refer to as Israel. Israel, Lebanon, today was many thousands of years ago referred to as Cana, the land of Cana. And in the land of Cana, which is in Palestine, before Hebrews were ever there, those people living in that area had their own religion, of course, and their own deities and their own ancient gods. And their primary god in the land of Cana was the planet Saturn. And Saturn was officially given the color of black, or assigned the color of black. He was referred to as the black planet, or the black sun. And
refers directly
Mars
to
was
the
the red sun, or the red planet. Venus was green. This is why the Islamic world has green in their flags, because of Venus. That's why the crescent and the star and the crescent in the Islamic world on their flags is the star and the crescent. The star is the morning star, star of the morning, or the star of the east, or eastern star. And the crescent is the crescent of the planet Venus, not the moon. And this is why the ancient peoples associated the color green with Venus.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why, as I said, today in Islamic countries, green is a very important color.
Now, what's green got to do with Venus? What's the
Well,
association?
anyway, let's go back to black, because that's germane to what we were talking about, the quartz. Black was assigned to the planet Saturn. And Saturn was called the black sun, or the black planet. Therefore, the priest of Saturn would wear black robes. They were the Saturnalian priesthood. Incidentally, in Phoenicia, Cana, long before the Hebrews ever got there, the symbol for the planet Saturn, the official theological symbol that we have found through excavations, I'm saying we, the world of archaeology has found many, many temples in what we today call Israel, which date back far before Israel to the old ancient Phoenician Canaanite times.
Mm-hmm.
And in those meeting places of worship, they have found the planet Saturn with the rings around it. This is why, incidentally, women are told to listen to their god, the planet Saturn, with the god of rings, and this is why you wear an ear ring. And men were told to get married before their father, Saturn, the god of rings, so you wear a wedding ring. The kings were crowned by Saturn, God Saturn, so therefore you wear the round crown. You wear earrings, men's wedding rings. Rings go back to the ring of Saturn, the old ancient god of the Phoenician Canaanite. But anyway, the planet Saturn was officially designated a particular symbol, which all gods have symbols and emblems of their godship. And Saturn's symbol in the old ancient digs that we're finding was two triangles interlaced, one going up and one pointing down, coming together.
Oh, the Star
it was called the Star of Saturn, or Saturn's Star. And today we call it the Star of David, but it's a six-pointed hexagram. A six-pointed hexagram was called the Star of Saturn. It was the official insignia of the god called Saturn. Saturn, as I said, was black, so therefore the priesthood of Saturn wore black robes. This is why even today priests wear black robes and judges wear black robes, and in universities and colleges, usually when kids graduate from college or high school or wherever, they wear a black robe. Why? It's because of the priesthood of Saturn, Saturnalian priesthood, which dominated education, schools, colleges, banks, institutions of man's world. This is why when your children graduate from high school or college today, they still wear the black robe, the same black robe that the judge wears, the same black robe the Catholic priest wears. And saffron, incidentally, when the Hebrews moved into that area called Canaan, they encountered this god, saffron, but by that time, the name of saffron was given the word, or the name was, how should I say this? The Hebrew term for saffron was El, E-L, El.
Oh.
So the Phoenician Canaanites would call their god saffron whatever they called him, but the Hebrews call him El. And El gives us the basis for so many words that are used in court today.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Like what?
For instance, you get, if you were a worshiper of the planet El, or planet Saturn, if you were an official in that religion, you were referred to even as an elder, because you are worshiping El. Therefore, you're an elder in the church. How did you get to be an elder? The same way you get into anything. You get elected. How did you get elected? Well, now that you are elected, you are now one of the elites. You're an elite because you were elected. How did you get all of that? How did all of this come about? Well, you had the juice that makes things happen. We refer to it today as electricity because it's the juice, the flow, the currency, the current. This is why you divide churches into different denominations. It's a play on words and terms, and only if you've spent some 40 years studying the world of the occult and terms and words and understanding how these symbols work will it begin to make sense to you. Now, I'm aware.
I need to take a break, actually, Jordan. And I just want to say, I need to take a break.
Okay.
And if I were to look up in the dictionary that takes me back through the etymology of various words, they wouldn't give me something to do with the Greek and L. There wouldn't be other origins.
Well, just look up L. Look up L in any good biblical reference work or any good encyclopedia or dictionary or whatever.
Okay.
And
I want to mention that we need to end this hour, and Jordan will do a second hour with us. And I've got a request from a listener. He wants you to explain the Son, S-O-N, and the Son, S-U-N, of God, and how you say religious texts were changed and they used to be astrological. If we could delve into that. And as you finish up the Saturn stuff, you said there's a lot to it. Jordan has books and videos. We have a link to his website. You can find them. And you can call the Radio Bookstore as well at 800-243-1438. Find out about his video. I'm Laura Lee. Hello there, I'm Laura Lee. Thanks for tuning in to Conversation for Exploration. Jordan Maxwell's here. He delves into today's institutions, religions, law, and he looks at their very ancient origins. And by the way, we have a link to his website. He's also got a video the Radio Bookstore carries at 800-243-1438 and lots of other books and source materials. And Jordan, welcome back.
Thank you, Laura.
You last told us about maritime law and maritime admiralty law superseding civil law. You told us about L and its relation to Saturn. I always heard of L as being a substitute word for God, that it was used as a substitute, so you wouldn't have to mention the real word, the name of God. And we also had a request from a listener to delve into one of your favorite subjects, and that is the relationship of Sun, S-O-N, and Sun, S-U-N, in ancient terms, and their meaning. And let's start there.
All right, well, let me finish off with the L quickly. L is not a substitute word for God in Hebrew. Actually, L is a term for the planet Saturn, who was the major god in that area called Canaan, and has been, of course, mutated like all words and terms in different languages, picked up by different people and applied in different ways. and it comes down to us today. Isis was very important in the ancient world, even up into Palestine, and as far up as into what we would call ancient Greece, was still heavily influenced by the Egyptian religion of Isis, and that's spelled I-S-I-S. And the beginning of wisdom was referred to as Isis. And then with the coming of Pharaoh Akhenaten, who changed the worship of Isis single-handedly as Pharaoh, he changed the whole superstructure of religion in the Egyptian world. You can do that if you're Pharaoh. And,
trying to invoke that monotheism and worship of the sun?
Yes, and consequently the sun became known as Amen-Ra, or Amun-Ra, spelled A-M-E-N-R-A. Amen-Ra. I mean, we still use those terms today in church because the Egyptians said nobody can see God, but you can see his offspring, his son.
Oh.
And so consequently, the offspring, his name is Amen, A-M-E-N-R-R-A, Amen-Ra. And so today we say the same thing in Christianity. No man can see God, but you can send your prayers to God through his divinely appointed Son. And then at the end of the prayer, you say Amen, because you're sending the prayer through Amen-Ra, God's Son, the light of the world. We're just talking about sun worship. However, going back to El, it became known as El Shaddai, and in the Hebrew, if you do not want to use Yahweh, because it's too holy a word, that was the name of God, you use Adonai. And Adonai is the abbreviation, not El. Adonai is the abbreviation for God in the Hebrew tradition. And Adonai simply goes back to the old ancient god Adonis. So there's a lot of old ancient paganry and fascination with the old ancient pagan prehistoric world. There's just an awful lot we haven't been told about religion and government and all kinds of...
What about the El in Israel and Elohim?
Yes, well, as I said, Isis was very important in the Middle East, in Egypt and the Middle East. And with the coming of Pharaoh Akhenaten, as I said, he changed the worship from Isis to Amun-Ra, or Amen-Ra. Well, the Hebrews were in Egypt, and they, of course, would learn about the worship of Isis. And then they were there during the transition from Isis to Amun-Ra, R-A.
But,
well, I was going to say, and then they moved into the Middle East, moved north into Palestine.
But that only lasted, what, 2 decades? Before
I'm not even sure.
Before they converted back to the old religion in Egypt? It's such a short-lived reign.
Because most of what we refer to today as both Hebrew and Christian, when we talk about Judaism and Christianity, in its modern-day form, it's actually Druidism. And Druidism can be traced back to the old Phoenician, Canaanite, Sumerian religious establishment.
Huh.
But anyway, I was going to say, when you move from Egypt, out of Egypt in that area, north into Palestine, with a tradition in your mind of Isis and Amun-Ra, R-A, and then encounter the new god, El, or the planet Saturn, El, this is all that the name implies. Israel, I-S-R-A-N-E-L, the 3 names of the ancient God. So Israel is nothing more than Isis, Amun-Ra, and El, the planet Saturn.
Interesting.
Anyway,
on to the
now when we go on now to the question, which, as I told you before, I'm fascinated with this whole subject of astrotheology. Okay. Why do we have the 2 words S-U-N and S-O-N? Well, first of all, you need to go back to the very beginnings of the human family, and God knows how far that must be. Nobody has accurately nailed it down, but I think it could be millions of years. Who knows?
Yeah.
But we do know that as far back as we have any records for, which is Proto-Sumerian, as far back as we can go to know anything with any kind of certainty, we know that the ancient peoples had a tremendous fear of a great enemy on the earth. And that great enemy that all ancient peoples feared, which we would refer to today as the devil, the great embodiment of all that is evil. But in the ancient world, that great evil that all nations respected and all nations talked about was quite simply darkness. When the world gets dark, people become afraid. And children are still afraid of the dark. Adults, if they have any sense, are afraid of the dark, walking through a major city in the dark. So consequently, the dark represented all things which are evil and bad and sinister and corrupt and harmful. And therefore, the the sun, obviously, to people who were living in those ancient times, if you've ever been out on the desert late at night, especially in the winter, and know how freezing cold it is and how absolutely hostile to human life it can be out on the desert late at night when it's absolutely freezing and the predator animals come out at night to eat, and you are nothing
vulnerable.
more than a sitting meal for some animal.
Yeah.
Therefore, you can appreciate that the ancient mankind feared the darkness, and they feared all the evil that lurked at night when the animals and the snakes and whatever came out at night. You couldn't sleep very well because there might be a spider or a scorpion or something, so the nighttime was very fearful. And so, therefore, night was always guided over, and the god of night was always the prince of darkness, because it does get dark at night. And consequently, all peoples all mankind waited each morning for the sun to come up. For when the sun would rise, it would give the world back warmth and light. It would bring energy. It would energize plants and animals and food so that we could get the energy from the sun and have food to eat.
Well, also remember there were no electric lights to switch on.
That's true. No televisions and no nice warm homes. There's merely the cold desert. And so consequently the sun became the symbol in the ancient and prehistoric world of the most wonderful gift that God has given to us. The most wonderful gift that God has ever provided for us is the sun, obviously. Mm-hmm. Because if there was no sun, you wouldn't be here. So therefore, it was understood that the sun was your risen Savior. And of course, the sun is your risen Savior. If you don't think so, wait till it don't come up. Consequently, it was only your Savior if it rises. I mean, it's a wonderful gift if it comes up, but if it don't come up, we're dead. So therefore, the sun became our risen Savior, who chased away the great evil of darkness, or the, quote, prince of darkness. And from there, we're talking about Sumerian now, from there you can begin to put together the whole religion that eventually became known as Judaism and Christianity. And Christianity is nothing more than the old telling of the oldest ancient story of the world, the war between goodness and bad, the war between God and the evil, the war between light and darkness. God's Son, the light of the world, and of course the Son is the light of the world. And he is always constantly doing battle with the prince of darkness. And consequently, the ancient people said that the sun does not belong to anyone. It's not owned by anyone on this earth. And everyone knew that. So who did it belong to? Well, it belonged to God who created it, obviously. So therefore, it was God's sun, not ours. So God's Son was, of course, the light of the world. He was our Savior, our risen Savior. And what's interesting, as I said, I can do 4 to 6 hours on this one subject. The whole subject is referred to as astrotheology.
So where do you go in those 4 to 6 hours? What kind of material do you touch on? What
I cover all of the words and terms that are used in Judaism, that are used, the concepts and ideas which are reflected in the Old and New Testament, where they came from. In the entire New Testament, it takes me about 2.5 hours to 3 hours just to do the New Testament alone, where you explain and show pictures so that you can intellectually understand what's being said in the Bible. Why does the sun walk on water? Well, of course, you go out at 6 o'clock in the evening and on the Pacific and watch the sun when it's walking on water.
Oh, when it's sitting right there in the horizon of an ocean?
Well, of course. And so consequently, when the sun comes up each morning, he was our risen Savior, but he doesn't belong to us. He belongs to God. So it's God's offspring. And so it's the offspring of God, and consequently it becomes God's Son, not ours.
Mm-hmm.
And all the ancient peoples realized that the sun was giving off energy, obviously. And consequently, since the sun is giving off energy, energy is, in point of fact, defining energy as life. Because without energy, there is no life. So therefore, the sun is giving energy, which is providing us with life. And that's scientifically factual today.
Okay, so you're suggesting that the earliest peoples were talking and using terms and phrases to describe the sun, the physical star that lights our world.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow along the way it got confused with or paralleled with talking about a person, a human.
Of course.
Tell us about that transition.
Well, Lord, I've got a...
Was it just hand?
That's interesting. Story, as I said, the whole story is called astrotheology, and when confronted with telling the story, I think, well, do we have 4 hours where I can sit down and start at square one? Because it's...
About 45 minutes.
Okay. It's an interesting, once you get the hang of it, once you start looking and understanding the code in the Bible. There's a Bible code. Heavens, there's all kinds of Bible codes.
This is not referring to every third or every 10th letter.
Well, that's one way of looking at a code. But the kind of code I'm talking about are terms and words. Now, for instance, let me go through this because this will give you an idea about where to start. On the first day of summer, incidentally, all of our religious concepts and ideas in the Anglo-Saxon English-speaking world and most of the rest of the world, all of our religious concepts and ideas, no matter what country, have come from the northern hemisphere, not the southern hemisphere, northern hemisphere.
Yeah.
Consequently, on the first day of summer is referred to as the summer solstice. The sun is in the northern hemisphere, as high and as far north as it's going to get. It's directly overhead in the northern hemisphere. And consequently, on the first day of summer, the sun is as high in the northern hemisphere as it's going to go. It's not going to go any further north. However, each day the sun moves 1 degree southward, but the move is so slight that no one even notices it. But it's moving each day 1 degree southward till it finally hits fall, and for the first time it finally occurs to you, or it dawns on you, that the sun has moved southward in the sky halfway down. And now the trees are starting to be affected because they're not getting the energy, so the leaves are turning colors, and it's become fall and autumn. That's because the sun, which was in the northern hemisphere, is now moving southward, and it's about halfway gone. Now we start getting colder and shorter evenings, shorter days, and longer evenings of darkness. And then the sun keeps moving southward until it hits the lowest point in the southern sky. And this is on December 22nd. And now it is as low in the southern sky as it's going to go. And that's on December 22nd, which is the beginning, the first day of summer in the southern hemisphere. The sun has gone south. If you have the money, you need to go to Rio. All the birds are flying south. Everybody else is going south. So, if you love the sun, go down to Rio for about 3 months because that's where it's down. The sun is down in the southern hemisphere.
Yeah, we know our basic astronomy.
Say it again.
Nothing. Go ahead.
So therefore, now the sun has reached its lowest point in the southern sky on December 22nd. Thank God it doesn't go any lower or it'll be gone completely. However, each day the sun was moving 1 degree. But something interesting happens to the sun on December 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. For 3 days the sun rises in the southern, down at the southernmost tip, in the same degree. It does not go any further south, and it doesn't come back northward. It rises on the exact same degree for 3 days. That's 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. So the ancient peoples realized that the sun rose for 3 days right in the same degree. And they knew it's been moving either north or south, but now it's not moving at all. So they said the sun, God's son, the light of the world, was dead for 3 days in his tomb. He was dead. He's not going anywhere. He's spinning his wheels. He's just not going anywhere. So he's dead. Anything that was moving all year and doesn't move at all is dead. But on the 25th, all the ancient peoples realized with their stone monuments and whatever, like Stonehenge, they realized that the sun moved 1 degree northward. Because the reflection on the stones showed that the sun has moved 1 degree. Therefore, anything that was dead for 3 days and is now moving again has been born again. And so therefore, the ancients celebrated the fact that the sun is now going to come back to us in the northern hemisphere. And he is now born again. So therefore, on December 25th, we still celebrate God's son's birthday, or his new birth, coming back to us. This is what Christmas is all about. The sun has reached its lowest point in the southern sky, and on December 25th, moves 1 degree northward, beginning its annual journey back to the northern hemisphere. And consequently, it continues each day, moving 1 degree northward, just like it did from the first day of summer going southward. It's now doing the same thing, coming from the south, going northward.
So we get these metaphors of dying in a tomb for 3 days and then rising again.
Right.
Which we apply to Jesus.
As it's moving northward, 1 degree each day, it passes over the equator. And consequently, at that moment and at that point, it becomes a quarter of the way up, so now half the way up, so now it has brought what we call spring. All of the animals and the flowers and everything begins to perk up because now they're getting the sun again. He's coming back. He said he would return, and he's returning. He's coming back again. And so in the spring, the first week of spring, all the nations of the ancient world celebrated God's Son has come back to us. He's coming back. He promised he would come back, and here he is. He's coming back. And so they would celebrate the spring. They would celebrate the spring equinox. Now, in the ancient world, when you died, especially in Egypt, they said that when you died, we still use the same terms today. The word pass, P-A-S-S, was used to talk about people who had died. We say grandmother passed last night, or they passed on, or they passed, what's another term? They passed on, they passed away last night. Well, the Egyptians said that when you died, you passed over from this life to the next life on the, quote, other side, So you have passed over from the death, from your life, into the world of the dead. You have passed over. And we even say that, I've heard that even in my lifetime, people saying, yeah, grandmother passed over last night. Consequently, the sun, which was dead in winter, reborn on December 25th, has finally come up in the northern hemisphere, come toward the northern hemisphere, enough that it has passed over the equator on its way back to us, which brings our first week of spring. So the ancient peoples before Hebrews ever existed, the ancient Phoenician, Canaanites, Sumerians, Babylonians, Hittites, Assyrians, all of the ancient cultures realized that the sun was coming back to the northern hemisphere, and so they celebrated the first week of its coming back, and they called it the Passover.
Yeah.
Because the sun was dead in winter and has come back alive and has passed over into the new life of spring. So the Passover, and of course Christians picked this up from the ancient people, from the ancient Hebrews, but they couldn't have the Passover because that's a Hebrew celebration. So the Christians would have the same identical worship of the sun, but they would just call it the resurrection of God's Son. And so the resurrection happens on the first week of spring, just like the Passover. And this is why Christians on the first day of spring or in the first week of spring go out and have and celebrate something called an Easter sunrise service. They're waiting for the sun to rise over the equator because he has passed over. He has been resurrected. So this is all Christianity is. It's a retelling of the old ancient astrotheological story of the ancient prehistoric world. Most people are not aware of any of this. This is what has always amazed me, is that Christians are continually talking about all the evil pagans, never realizing their religion is the oldest pagan religion that's ever been on the earth, and that is sun worship. And consequently, you take the metaphor, and this is all the New Testament is. This is a symbolic metaphor. It even has God's Son, who represents the light of the world. And of course, the sun is the light of the world. It has God's Son saying that many will look with their eyes but not see, and listen with their ears but not hear, and with their heart not get the sense of it. And the Apostle Paul said to the Christians of his day, I bear you witness that you have a zeal for God, but not according to accurate knowledge. The point being is that if you're going to honor the divine presence in the universe, do it with intelligence. Understand what you're doing. Understand what the words mean. Understand, and don't use your religion to put down other people because yours is the correct religion, when in point of fact, all religions go back to the old ancient astrotheology, astrological story, going all the way back to day one, back to Sumeria, Babylonia, Phoenicia, Cana, the Hittites, the Sumerians. All of this is a very ancient story that's been retold, and this is why the Bible is called the greatest story ever told. It's not the greatest collection of facts the world's ever known. It's the greatest story ever told. It's a story.
Okay, but there's so many details to the life of Jesus that sure you can find some parallels with worship of the actual star, our sun. But how do you explain all these others? And are you discounting the whole existence of the life of Jesus, or just that through accretion other stories would parallel his because they're right there in the old stories that came before? We'll have to take a break before you answer that. So I have to take a break. So, Paul, is this our half-hour break? And we'll come right back with Jordan Maxwell and Laura Lee.
Laura Lee Online. www.lauralee.com.
All interviews on The Laura Lee Show are available on audio cassette. For information, call 1-800-243-1438.
The sweet secret of the herb stevia lies in a complex molecule called stevioside, a glycoside composed of glucose, softhrose, and steviol, a complex molecule that gives this herb from Paraguay its extraordinary sweetness, 10 to 15 times sweeter than common table sugar. But here's the really extraordinary part. Stevia does not affect blood sugar metabolism. Some studies even report that stevia reduces plasma glucose levels in normal adults. Sweet, nutritious, natural, and good for you. Wisdom of the Ancients introduces Stevia Plus. Take these little packets with you everywhere, containing powdered stevia that equals 2 teaspoons of sugar in sweetness. Sprinkle on food and beverages alike. I use stevia daily. Add the liquid concentrate to lemon juice and water, and you have refreshing lemonade, and decarbonated water for a soda substitute. Stevia makes any herbal tea taste sweeter and better. Stevia is good for your skin, too, applied externally. Try it. It's versatile, good for you, and sweet without the calories.
Wisdom of the Ancient Stevia products are the highest quality available. Call 1-800-243-1438.
We all try to watch our diet to get a balance of nutrition, but that's not always possible. There is a gap between the nutrition from the average American diet and the optimum diet for the human system. The challenge is to take care of our own health while being able to enjoy comfort foods. That's why nutritionist and biochemist Udo Erasmus developed Missing Link. It bridges this gap with foods naturally high in essential nutrients, trace minerals, vitamins, and fiber. Call 1-800-243-1438. Missing Link is a powder that you sprinkle on your food, making your food taste better, and 3 tablespoons daily is all you need to achieve optimum nutrition. Call 1-800-243-1438. Each bag contains a 1-month supply and is only $19.95. Call 1-800-243-1438.
Laura Lee here in the Laura Lee Show. We continue our conversation with Jordan Maxwell. And Jordan's been explaining some interesting parallels between ancient worship of our star, the sun, and the story of Jesus. So where do you place the story of Jesus and all the other details that come up with it? How do you see it, Jordan?
Well, as I said, I do a 4-hour seminar in which I start with Matthew and walk all the way through the Bible and show you the overwhelmingly obvious that unless someone points it out to you, it's like an optical illusion. It's like looking at these new kind of artwork, this computerized artwork is nothing but a blur.
Oh, and until you adjust your eyes and then it jumps off the page at you in 3D.
And that's exactly what the whole world of learning is like. I mean, you could sit and look at a law library and have no idea in the world what you're looking at, you know. I mean, where does it all start? Where does it all come from? I mean, well, take 40 years of your life like I have and sit down and study for the next 40 years and figure it out. And then when you do, what you are also going to discover once you have got a handle on it and know where it came from, now you're going to discover that virtually nobody knows what you're talking about. Why? Because they haven't sat with you for the past 40 years. They have no idea in the world what you're doing. And consequently, you sound like a fool because nobody knows what you're talking about.
It's lonely, doesn't it?
Yeah. I can appreciate, the Nikolai Teslas of the world and other people who try to help their fellow man to understand something that people didn't even know existed.
What drives you to do this? What drove you to do for 40 years?
I guess it was because of my bloodline. Because my family, my mother had an uncle when I was growing up as a child who worked in the Vatican Secretary of State's office. She also had, which I only would see on every couple of years, would come back for a brief visit. But nonetheless, he was a Vatican official, and my mother also had 2 federal judges that happened to live in our hometown who were our uncles, so I grew up with federal judges. And my great-grandfather, my mother's grandfather, was a senator from the state of Florida who died in office because he was too powerful and they couldn't get him out. And so I have politics and religion in my blood. I was born and raised Catholic. We were a very Catholic family. But I was always asking questions, always as a child. I got myself in trouble. The first official trouble I got myself into was at confirmation when I was 9 years old, 10 years old. We were told at confirmation that when the bishop, after the ceremonies in the church were over, the bishop will ask if anyone has a question. The young people have questions to ask their bishop, and we were told by the nuns, do not ask any questions, period. You just sit and keep your mouth shut. So the night of the big event, after the ceremonies were over, and the bishop did say just that, he said, well, now that we have the new Catholic children confirmed, are there any questions? And I stood up, and because I was always arrogant, I stood up and said, yes, I have a question. I said, my father works with torches like a welder. I said, could I take one of my dad's torches and burn an angel? If there was an angel next to me, could I take a torch and burn him?
What a question.
Yeah, and the bishop says, well, no, what would make you think you could? I said, well, I'm just asking. I don't know. And he said, well, no, you cannot take a torch and burn an angel. And I said, why not? He said, well, because angels are spirits. You can't burn a spirit.
Yeah.
It's, fire is a natural phenomenon like wood or paper or something, but you can't burn a spirit. And I said, well, if I can't burn a spirit, why am I concerned about going to hell where my spirit's going to burn forever if you can't burn a spirit? And so that was the first time I got a stiff talking to and told never to open your mouth again.
I see. Hell's got no no cachet here because you can't burn anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So consequently, it didn't take me very long growing up listening to my uncles who were federal judges, and I hung around the church and priest and all kinds of interesting people and the mayor, and I got a feeling and a sense for government and for religion and for law, etc. At the ripe old age of 17 and a half when I left home, I pretty well had heard all the stories.
Wow. All this kind of stuff? Is this the kind of stuff that you'd sit around the dinner table at night with certain select members of your family and talk about?
Mm-hmm.
All this stuff, the ancient symbology and where it came from. And
and
wow.
And most people would look at me like, what is this kid talking about? And I said, it's history. Go to the library, read a book. It's history.
How are we able to do this and not have to go and get regular work?
Say that again?
How are you able to devote 40 years to studies and sitting in libraries and reading all this and not get a regular job?
Yeah, I know. That's what my wife said.
Lucky guy. Not everybody can pull that off and sit in the libraries and do what you've done.
Well, let me tell you, I lost everything because of it. I lost my home. I lost my marriage. I lost my wife. I lost everything I ever owned in this world, and that's the way the universe is. You want something bad enough, it may allow you to have it, but if you're going to have that, then you've got to pay something. You've got to pay for whatever it is you do. Well, I paid a hell of a price for the kind of knowledge and the kind of work that I have done all my life. Am I happy about that? I don't think so. I don't know that it was.
A fair deal.
I don't know that it was worth it. I mean, I now can sit before large audiences at huge universities and discuss intelligently with huge audiences all kinds of fascinating knowledge and materials that most people have never been privileged to know anything about. And I do that. I travel around the world speaking to audiences, and I know that people are sitting there with glassy eyes, having no idea in the world what I'm talking about. So in one way, I got what I wanted. I wanted wisdom and knowledge. The other, though, I paid a terrible price for it. And I'm not sure I did the right thing. Because ignorance is bliss. You're far more happier when you don't know half of the things that are going on. But that's my life. That's who I am. And so I accept it, and it's far too gone now to change. I just study every day, read and study every day, and and I am also happy that I am in the company of, almost daily, in the company of other writers, authors, lecturers, teachers, scientists. I'm a member of organizations, physicists, international physicist organizations, international research societies. So I not only do my own homework, but I'm just dazzled by the brilliance of other people and their work. And so the more I learn, the more I know how much I don't know. It's just a fascinating world, and that's why I can't understand anyone who would tell me that life is boring. Life is boring because you're not doing anything. You know, if you knew what the world was all about and understood some of the ancient mysteries of the world and some of the most profound, knowledge that's sitting in front of us, and we don't even see it. I mean, we haven't even figured out, where the Aztecs went yet, and all of the ancient pyramids and great temples around the world, and who built all of these great monuments and the Nazca lines in Peru, and God knows, we can sit and talk for hours about all the ancient mysteries of the world. And what's going on in the Atlantic Ocean and Bermuda Triangle? Is anything going on? Well, you might not think so, but the United States Navy thinks so, and they're very concerned about it. I don't know if you know anything about it, but they don't know about it, and they're very concerned about it.
What do you think?
Consequently, I'm just saying that when you go to a court, you're going to go into government, you're going to step into the halls of power. You really need to know what's been going on the earth while you were asleep. This is a fantastic world we live in. And the more you begin to delve into it, the more you begin to see how much you didn't know. Let me go back to this thing about the Easter or the worship of the sun. In the ancient Phoenician Canaanite world, which we today refer to as Israel, that area, Israel and Lebanon, was known as Cana. That area of the world celebrated the first week of spring like everyone else did. The name of their celebration was called the Marriage Feast of Cana. And we're told about the Marriage Feast of Cana in the Bible. That's a metaphor. It's a symbolic story, a symbolic metaphor. Because if you understand that the marriage feast was the marriage feast of Cana was a metaphor for the sun coming back in spring, then you begin to see how the story unfolds. It's fascinating. As I said, the sun comes back, it crosses the equator, it has now passed over into its new life in spring. Consequently, this also has to do, this marriage feast of Cana has to do with why we call God the Father.
Oh, okay.
Why is God necessarily the Father? I've often wondered, maybe God is also a female, because the Bible says God created man in his own image, male and female.
So why do we call it Mother God, Mother Goddess?
Well, so maybe God is both male and female. Maybe it's neither one.
Yeah.
Maybe the whole thing is a metaphor. But anyway, the reason why we call God the Father is because of rain. That's why we call God the Father. It's because of rain. R-A-I-N is not the word for water falling from the heaven. R-A-I-N is a very ancient word for God, or name of the most ancient god in the Hindu language. In the Hindu, one of the most ancient gods of the Hindus, and I do mean ancient, his name was Rain, R-A-I-N. And this is why we use that term in our Anglo-Saxon. We have adopted that word of the god named rain. We call it rain when water falls from heaven. It's because the ancient people said that when in the spring, Mother Earth was impregnated by God the Father, because the sacred fluid from heaven came and impregnated Mother Earth, Mother Nature.
I see.
Consequently, Mother Nature was impregnated by who? Well, obviously by God the Father. So God the Father.
That's just not raindrops falling down from that sky.
Right. And so consequently, the raindrops were actually the sacred fluid coming from the Father into the female, Mother Earth. but you can't have that kind of activity. Now you're talking about promiscuous activity here between God the Father and Mother Earth, and you don't want something like that going on unless, of course, you're married. And so consequently, you have to have a marriage feast to celebrate the marriage feast between God the Father and Mother Earth. And therefore, the metaphor, the symbolic metaphor for spring in the ancient land of Cana, as I said, was called the marriage feast of Cana. The marriage feast was in honor of God the Father being married to Mother Earth or Mother Nature in preparation for the spring rains which were coming to impregnate Mother Nature or Mother
Things
Earth.
would grow.
And consequently, the story went something like this, symbolically, that Mother Earth or Mother asked God's Son, Mother Nature or Mother Earth, the Mother asked God's Son to draw water, which the Son does, it draws water, and have it rain on the grapes so that we can make wine for the great marriage feast in spring when the spring weddings begin. And so you're not going to have the grapes for celebration of wine and the wine celebrations if it doesn't rain on the grapes and they don't grow. So therefore, Mother asked God's Son to draw water to rain on the grapes so that you can change the grapes into wine. So what you've done is take the Son's water and change water into wine.
Okay, I have a question for you on a personal level.
You know, it's when you lay it out in pictures and you see it in the old, when you see pictures, the mind quickly comprehends the story better than just telling it over the over
you
radio.
conveyed yourself very clearly, and these are some fascinating parallels. What I wanted to know are two things. The ancient mindset, I mean the real ancient one, do you believe that they saw the sun as an animate being as they saw Mother Earth as an animate being, or were they just speaking in metaphorical terms about the natural world around them and creating rituals?
Excellent question. Yes. No nation, no people ever recognized the sun as a god. No one. So therefore, it is actually a misnomer to say that the ancient people were sun worshippers. In point of fact, the ancient peoples all realized the sun was a divine gift to the universe and to our world.
But they didn't confuse him with God.
But it was not a living God. It represented all of the qualities that obviously God would have. All of the wonderful qualities and powers that God would exercise and have was obviously represented symbolically by the sun. First, God is obviously brilliant. Well, the sun is brilliant. God is also the creator of all life and the sustainer of all life. Well, that's what the sun does. It creates and sustains all life. And it brings warmth and happiness. It chases away the boogeyman of darkness. And so it chases away the evil prince of darkness. That's what God does. It provides food for mankind. It provides warmth and protection.
Right.
And so all of the wonderful qualities that God obviously has would be symbolically represented in the sun.
So even you're suggesting the ancients knew it was just a symbolic language, because we do that today. We anthropomorphize everything around us. It just helps us relate to it better. It makes it easier to talk about. Okay, next question for you. As you grew up a Roman Catholic, and I don't know if you ever believed it, considering the question that you had, you were testing it when you were little, and you're still testing it now, although I think you've broken free. So you look at this and you've demystified it. You're saying, well, maybe there aren't spiritual beings, maybe there aren't angels, maybe there aren't this whole metaphysical world of spirit, but it's just a misunderstanding that we've come down to. Or where are you on this question? I'm just asking you personally.
I'm so delighted that you asked that question, because it wouldn't have occurred to me to bring it up, but I'm glad you did. Because I want to establish, I have the highest of respect for spirituality. I am totally committed to the concept that there is a divine presence in the universe that men have called God. I have no problem whatsoever with that idea of a divine presence or a divine, or, how would you say, I don't see it as a man or as a...
Neither do I, as a creator, whatever it is.
Yeah, it's a divine creating presence in all things, in the animal life, in the vegetable life, in the life of the universe. There's a breathing in of energy and a breathing out. We can see stars coming into being, stars dying, people being born, people leaving. There is a divine presence in all things I have the highest of respect for.
Okay.
And so in that way, I could say that I am totally a believer in God, or a total believer in the divine principles of the universe.
Are you then trying to free us, your fellow human beings, from erroneous, limited ideas of God?
Yes. That's basically what I'm trying
He's
to do.
He's not sitting there on a throne,
right,
up in the sky? Yeah.
Well, what I'm doing, I should add to what I just said, the fact that I have no problem whatsoever with the idea of spirits or angels or demons or whatever you want to call them, and there's all kinds of explanations for that other world of darkness, of where you go when you die or whatever. There's all kinds of ideas expressed, but I am totally convinced for myself, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that there is, in point of fact, a spirit world. There's no doubt in my mind about it.
What convinces you?
And so therefore, I don't know if I would call them angels necessarily. I don't know if I would call them demons, but I do believe that there is a presence, a spiritual, divine presence, which they meaning whoever they are able to come in and go out of dimensions. So I don't have any problem with the idea of angels. I'm quite sure that they're here. I'm quite sure that maybe there's all kinds of spirit entities in this world that we don't see necessarily, but we will see face to face on occasions. Like the Apostle Paul said, some have entertained angels unaware and didn't even know it. And so, I mean, how many stories have we heard in our lifetime? How many thousands of stories of people who were caught in a terrible accident or some terrible tragedy?
Miracles that happen.
Yeah, someone walked in out of nowhere and helped them and protected them, and then walked out and were gone, and we'll never see them again.
Do you have a spiritual practice that you do, Jordan?
Say it again?
Do you have a spiritual practice that you do?
Not
to put you in touch with that realm, or?
No, I'm a very spiritual person. I read and I study. I communicate with the spirit world in my own way, but I have a very high respect for the entire superstructure of what we would call God and the spirit world.
Do you pray?
I have a very high respect for. I'm not a fool. I understand the difference between metaphor, but I also know that there's something else going on besides the metaphor, and that's that I have a high respect for.
What do you think? I mean, your mission is to wake people up and say, "Gee, look at our history and what these ancients were really looking at, and look at how we're expressing religion today or law." What would you hope if you could, take a Sin City computer program and redesign the world? Under what lines? What would you test out? What would you?
I would like to see the entire world. This is merely an answer to your question, but I would like to see the entire world for the first time sit down and listen to the whole story of the ancient mystery schools, the ancient mystery school teachings of astrotheology and the secret teachings of all the ancient ages of the world, what the ancient peoples were trying to tell us. What do the Aztecs and the Mayas and Incas know that we are too brilliant to even look at? We're too smart. I think that what we have had are people who have purposely kept us ignorant so that we don't bother to look at what the Egyptians were really teaching, what they really believed, and why they believed it. I think that there are some very, very intelligent and powerful people in the world who know that there was a huge and a humongous story going on in the world for thousands of years, but it's not on a need-to-know basis for you. I mean, you don't need to know. You just go on and do your job. And
is it too empowering to know?
Yeah, I think it's very empowering, and I think that's exactly the problem, is that the people in power do not want you to know how much power you really have. Once you get in touch with your own spiritual connection with God and get your own spiritual connection, all of a sudden you don't need anyone. You don't need to crawl on your knees to government. You don't need to have anyone tell you how to act and how to think and how to treat your fellow man, how to treat your mate in marriage. You don't need anyone to tell you any of these things. And therefore you become a light in yourself, and people then begin to see that you are a brilliant person, that you live your life with profound wisdom and knowledge, and you move in such a way as to show that you are a well-adjusted and have respect for other people, respect for belief systems, respect for the universe. Today, unhappily, mankind has no respect for themselves, much less the earth or their wife or their husband or anything else. They don't even have respect for themselves.
Well, certainly that message that you expressed has been kept damped down because it was threatening to former leaders of the world, that, you know, those who had it by its grip. But I keep wondering if we can afford to do that anymore today.
I think you're right.
Take us all down with the ship, you know? I mean,
I totally think you're right. I don't think we can continue to play dumb anymore. I think nobody, I mean, even children, you will see it in all children. No child wants to be chastised by the parent or by the teacher. No one wants to be told, sit down and be quiet, you know, you're out of line. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be made fun of in front of the class and made to look like a fool, even though you acted like a fool and therefore you got chastised. But nobody likes that. Humans do not like to be put down. They like to take the front seat and be pompous and arrogant, and then when someone comes in with real authority and says, go sit in the back, you're not capable of sitting up here with us, that no one likes that. So consequently, that's in part of human nature. We don't want to know that we've been wrong. We don't want to hear that. All we want to know is that what we believe to be true is true. That's all we want to hear.
Well,
now, if you can come in and show people, say in any particular religion or any particular philosophy, be it Democrat, Republican, whatever, and if you can show people that what they believe to be true is absolutely flawlessly true, and you can articulate that in such a way as to dazzle them with your brilliance, they're going to support you. They're going to love you. Because why? You are telling them what they want to hear. And this is exactly what, in professional and good people who know how to manipulate audiences, this is what they do. They will tell you exactly what you want to hear.
And then go off and do something else entirely.
Exactly.
Sounds like that.
And then when after they have made all the money off of you, then they go away laughing. So what I'm saying is, I think you are totally right. That I don't think, on this earth, we are not crew. This is a spaceship going through space, this earth is, and we're not crew. I mean, we're not passengers, I should say. We're all crew. We are all responsible for this beautiful creation we call our earth, and somebody has messed it up so bad and dirtied it up so bad that they now have a thing called a space shuttle. And it never occurred to anyone that a shuttle is a bus. You take a bus when you're leaving town. Somebody is trying to build a space station out there, and no one seems to know why.
Oh, you're saying a safe landing, so that when the whole world clashes ecology?
I think that there are some very powerful people in high places that you have never heard of and do not know anything about, that they know. They are many things, but they're not stupid. And they know that the earth, as it is now, is practically doomed. The people are too far gone. They're too ignorant, too unintelligible. They have no respect for themselves or the land or the earth. They know that the people have lost contact with their divinity and their divine presence in the universe. So if you were a master at the top of the world, you would plan on leaving here because it's too far out of control. They're cutting down the trees. They're cutting. You only have an inch of soil left.
That the other alternative would be to, begin the education process, the waking up process. I don't know. I have one last question for you, then our hour is through. If you believe in angels and if you believe in metaphysical beings, then what is wrong fundamentally with the Christian message, which is that Jesus came down in order to set an example of what we could be? How could that not be? I'm open to that possibility.
All right, look at what I would say in answer to that is that if you understand the Christian message as I am telling you it exists as a metaphor, it is a divinely beautiful and powerful story about the war between light and darkness. It's the war between intellectual enlightenment. This is why it has Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. No one comes to the Father unless he comes through me. I think it is a beautiful story. It is a profoundly deep and beautiful story about how God or the Creator would want you to be enlightened. And I could go on. We could do another program just on astrotheology, of which I have just touched on.
We have to wrap up this hour first.
Yes, I know. So. But I'm saying that I have the highest respect for the story in the Bible, in the New and the Old Testament, as long as you understand it's a story. It is trying to tell you something, and if you're looking at the metaphor as actual history, you're not going to get it.
Thank you for that clarification, and thank you for some fascinating discourse. Appreciate all the 40 years' work that you've been doing, Jordan. We have a link to Jordan's website. The Radio Bookstore has one of his many videos, and you can call them at 800-243-1438. You go check out his website. Thanks for listening to Conversation for Exploration. That was Jordan Maxwell. I'm Laura Lee.